All right. Hi, and welcome to Rainbow Space Magic Con 2.0. This is the, what panel is this? This is the, I think, agent. This is the agent panel.
This is the 500th panel since we started.
This is the how to be awesome and get an agent panel. You're welcome.
This panel is for authors who are looking for or planning to look for an agent. We're going to share our own status as far as the agent search, our personal experiences, and then some tips that may help you do your search, organize it. I think we should introduce ourselves first. So if we want to go around, Jaden, you want to start and just tell who you are, what you write, and if you are agented, and if so, where.
I'm Jaden Summerfield. My pen name is JS Fields. I am agented with Sam Morgan at the Lots Agency. Okay. I write nonfiction, science nonfiction, and then science fiction and fantasy.
Okay. And Jose?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jose Iriarte. I am represented by Cameron McClure at the Donald Moss Literary Agency. I write science fiction and fantasy. I am primarily known for my short stories, but I have a middle grade book that's supposed to maybe hopefully come out at some point in the indeterminate future.
Okay, Elle?
Hi, I'm Elle. I am represented by Naomi Davis at the Bookends Literary Agency. I write mostly science fiction romance, but I also have just signed a contract for a 3-book urban fantasy romance that's coming.
Awesome. Okay, and I'm J. Scott Coatsworth, and I write science fiction, fantasy, this thing that's not really new, but I never had a name for, science fantasy, and magical realism, although I've been also schooled that magical realism can be a little bit dicey term if you're not writing fiction that's Latin American or colonial based. So one of my friends said he also calls it realism adjacent fantasy. So RAF. Anyway, I am not agented. I've been trying to get an agent for about a year. So I'm going to be playing the everyman here, you know, the guy that's trying to get the agent and has tried everything and is going to try more things. So but without further ado, let's dive into our panel here. We've got a series of questions we've come up with as we were talking this over the last couple of weeks. So we'll go over those and our thoughts. And then as Jaden had said, we'll open it up to everybody for other questions. First off, Lisa, you'd said what an agent can really do for you would be a good topic for discussion. So why don't we throw that at you first? And what can an agent do for you once you get one?
Sure. So my age, I have had 4 over the years. I'm on agent 4. Yeah. And I absolutely love my current agent. I've loved all my agents. We all parted very amicably, but lots of things that an agent can do for you that you probably can't do for yourself. For one thing, getting your work in front of an editor directly, or picking up a phone and calling an editor directly, or getting together for lunch with an editor directly, definitely not something that I could do. Other things, negotiating my contract, they offered a certain amount and she doubled it and paid for herself. So that was really, really very beneficial for me and her. Holding on to some of my rights so that she could sell them elsewhere for a larger amount of money was a big help. I wouldn't have known to do that. She turned a 1-book contract into a 4-book contract.
Wow.
Again, not something that I would have even thought to push for, because I'm not, I mean, I can be pushy, but I don't pushy with people who want to pay me money. I just want to take the money and run. Yeah. You know, when there are problems, it's nice that somebody can go to bat for me so that I can just be the nice, sweet, wonderful, you know, meet all my deadlines author, and she can be like, girl, pay my author, which is really awesome. So, and also legalese. I don't speak legalese. I speak a little bit of Huttese, maybe a little Wookiee. I definitely don't speak legalese, and she is great with all the contract negotiations.
Okay, how do you say contract in Wookiee? Very nice. Okay, Jose, how about you? What's your experience? What has an agent done for you that you couldn't do for yourself?
Well, the deal that I alluded to that I currently have is actually an IP work, writing in somebody else's IP. Mm-hmm. And
IP, for the people out there that don't know?
So I'm working on intellectual property that somebody else actually owns.
Okay.
And I'm hired to come at a book in their line of books. Okay. Basically, the book packagers, they reached out to agents and said, we are looking for authors to audition for this project who meet certain criteria. And I was one of the authors who had the chance to audition. But that came through my agent. So that opportunity simply would not have existed for me otherwise.
And I'd like to jump on that too. I've gotten 2 auditions for similar. I got an audition to write for Stranger Things, which, you know, if I had gotten it, would have been awesome. But
Yes.
I wouldn't have even had the chance if I hadn't been represented.
Okay. And Jaden, you?
So, you know, echoing what everyone else said, no point in rehashing that. I think there's a couple things. I mean, the biggest one is the agent does all the things I don't want to do. I just I want to write. I don't want to deal with, you know, anything involving self-publishing, like making my own imprint, or I don't want to deal with querying, and I don't all I have to do is write. And that is amazing. Some other things that agents do for you is they can reach out and get book blurbs, which I think is one thing we haven't talked about. So if you've seen on the backs of books, it'll be, you know, this is by this no-name author, but oh, wow, Stephen King wrote a little blurb for them in the back. So that's another thing that your agent does, is they can reach out to their contacts or say, you know, this is a person who writes in a similar genre as you and who's a much bigger name. Let's see if they'll read your book and give us 2 lines. And that helps sell books.
Wow, very nice. So as the everyman here, I get none of those things. So I think that's awesome. So let's move along here. Now we've discussed a little bit in our chat if agents are as diverse as the market as a whole, or if agents also reflect the diversity of publishing as a whole, which has not historically been very diverse. When you guys were looking for agents, what did you find in terms of what they were looking for in the LGBTQ market? Was it easy to snag an agent in terms of finding a diverse agent, or did you have a real hard time tracking down someone who you thought really fit what you do? Why don't we start with Jaden this time?
So I was not looking necessarily for an agent who wanted LGBTQ stuff, because a lot of the stuff I write is meant for a more mainstream market than just like straight up lesfic. However, there's lesbians in all my books, so they would obviously have to be comfortable with that. But it was sort of a self-selecting thing. Like if they wanted more pages, then I just assumed they were fine with it. But I definitely didn't sort based upon who I thought would, you know, be most open to the queer side of it, because I was looking more for who can best place my work in the market, who are the big name agents in sci-fi fantasy today. That was much more interesting to me.
Okay.
I don't think that agents are a rough bag, right? Because we know the ones that are active on Twitter, but we don't necessarily know all, like that's a small portion of all the agents involved. And so I'd say the ones that are active on Twitter, from what I've seen, tend to be a more diverse lot. They tend to be younger. They tend to be much more ethnically diverse, and definitely a lot more queer. But I think the real, like, traditional, older, potentially big hitter, although not necessarily, tend to live behind, you know, agency websites, and we don't know all that much about them.
Yeah. Okay, you guys?
Well, you know, I mean, when I started querying, I used Query Tracker, which I would highly recommend to anybody who's querying. And when I started, I mean, I queried very, very, very widely. We're talking over 100. But I started by, you know, who would represent everything I do. So I started by which agents not only represented science fiction, but also romance, but also LGBTQ. Those were at the top. And then I narrowed from there. 2 of my agents, one of my agents was lesbian. My current agent is bisexual. And so she absolutely represents a very, very diverse stable of writers. She's got a little bit of everything. So I was very fortunate to get her, and I feel like she knows which people to send my work to, because she's part of the community and she's an advocate for the community, and she gets my work. So I know that there's no issues there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was when I look for an agent, I look for somebody who represented all the different genres that I tend to write in. And I considered the deals that they'd made and where they were located and things like that. My perception, which may be inaccurate, my perception is that the majority of agents that I seem to be aware of have progressive ideals, but they tend to come from privilege, and they tend to largely be and white. And my perception is that many agents do want push diverse authors and diverse projects. Where it looks to me like it tends to fall apart is actually at acquisitions, is where it looks to me like it falls apart.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's got into a big agency and has spent the last year basically trying to get the manuscript actually sold to a publisher on the other end. So it's like you get past the one gatekeeper and there's another gatekeeper on the other side. We'll talk about that a little later.
That is like a big thing that people should know. Like we eventually gave up on my first book that got me my agent after 2 years of querying. Yeah. Like just because you get an agent doesn't mean you're selling.
Right, you're not always there. Yeah, so we'll go over that in a little bit here. I'm doing my own agent search right now, and I found that there are a lot of agents that specifically say they're looking for diversity, looking for LGBTQ, et cetera. They do, like you said, tend to often be the more diverse agents, either by race or by being part of the community, et cetera, being younger. I was hoping Harry was here because I noticed when I was looking at some UK agents that none of them basically said anything about the LGBTQ market in their agent sites. Whereas I found that a lot on the MSWL site and some other places we'll talk about. But yeah, I had an actual scale that I built because my goal is to be at a big New York publisher if I'm going to get published. I've already been at a medium-sized queer publisher. And if I'm not going to do it myself, I want to kind of go all the way. So I have a little ranking that is, are they in New York City? Are they a new agent? Because I want prioritize someone that's a little younger and hungrier, whereas the more established agents they may already have somebody like me that fits their stable. And see, I've got, are they LGBTQ or otherwise indicate diversity that they're looking for? And then I've got a thing that's called X factor, which, sometimes you're just reading the thing about the agent. It's like just something about them strikes you. Maybe it's their picture. Maybe it's something about the way they word their thing. They're just like, this would be a cool person to work with. So it's not that I don't submit to other agents, but those are the ones that I kind of give priority to go to. So moving ahead here, when you're looking for an agent, kind of follows up what I just said there. What did you guys look for beyond just, you said that you'd look for agents that kind of worked in the areas, the genres that you guys work in. Is there anything else particular that you wanted in an agent? Let's go back to Jose. Was there something you were looking for that in particular?
I tend to be hyper organized about things like this. So I had
hyper is an understatement.
Spreadsheet. I had a whole scoring system where I would just basically give for each thing, I definitely did not feel that it was a requirement for my agent to be in New York City, but I did think it was a plus if they were. I necessarily need, I looked for where they were. I looked for what kinds of deals. Was I familiar with any of their authors? And did I feel like I wrote in a similar space to some of their authors? Then I started querying, once I kind of figured out those points, then I started querying from the top down.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Elle?
No, really. I was looking, I didn't much care. I really just wanted I wanted someone to love me. But no,
we love you.
Big name, small name, new agent, established agent, big agency, small agency. I just wanted someone who's going to really connect with the work and really get it and get what I wanted to do. I did have some issues with a couple of agents who only wanted to market me at small press. And I don't have any issues with small press. That's where I am. Yeah. But I didn't want to not shoot for the big five. And that cut a couple of people out of the running pretty quickly. It's nice. I actually was in the very fortunate position to have had a choice. 2 of my 4 rounds of looking for an agent, I had choices, And that cut some people out because you're like, well, we kind of see you as a small press author, you know. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't want to make that assumption. I want to have someone who's going to certainly try at least, and we certainly always shoot at the top. So
that's fair. And Jaden?
I mean, I feel like we probably hashed this a bit.
Okay.
Just yeah, mostly did I know some of the other authors they repped? Had I read things that would have resonated? I'm sure you can hear Frozen in the background. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, just that. But you know, it wasn't, I did not have a big like selection to choose from of people who like, I had a lot of interest, but then people who actually offered were fairly narrow. So it was the really digging into the agent portion didn't happen there until the very end. Once you have a few offers, then I feel like that was when I was like, okay, which of these people do I connect with the best? Who's got the best sales and stuff? But I think for a lot of people, when you're looking for an agent, you just want an agent who loves your work. The rest you can futz around with later.
So you're all basically like shoot wide and then see what comes in. Okay. So once you are actually in the agent search, I want to talk a little bit about that. It can be very hard to find an agent. I was really gladdened to hear, I think it was Justin Chen at Nebula last year, and he was saying that every author that he knew that had gone looking for an agent, if they stuck with it long enough, eventually got one. So, you know, long enough might be 3 or 4 years, we'll see. But that really heartened me. Where do you guys go to look for agents to try to find folks that match what you do? I've got a few sources we've put down here, but what's your kind of go-to? You'd mentioned the query, was that an L?
Querytracker.net has basically found me my agent every single time.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my go-to as well.
Okay. And Jaden?
Agentquery.com, also good.
Okay. And the other ones I've used, I use the manuscript wishlist website. I'm just typing these down so we can put these into chat. I did a lot of searching through the MSWL site. I also used the MSW hashtag on Twitter. And of course, like you guys said, that's a little bit more limited in who's there, but there's a nice selection of agents. So basically I go in and I use Twitter's filter to once a week search that site. And I look for hashtag sci-fi or hashtag fantasy and MSWL, or sometimes just look through MSWL once a week and just scan everybody and look for agents that I don't recognize that I don't have on my list yet. Again, my very organized ranked list like Jose. The other thing I've been doing is Locus Magazine. Locus lists deals that are made each month. And I've found a surprising number of agents in there that are working in the sci-fi market that I did not find in other sources. I don't know how much chance I'm gonna have of getting one of them, but I figure again, kind of that wide shot. So I just kind of go through that and look for agents and see if they match what I'm doing. You have a look on your face, Elle.
Oh, I was just looking at what was in the chat. Somebody says always shoot for the head. I'm like, well, okay, sure.
Now, is that the head, or is that like somebody's got to take a little quick trip?
I'm not, no.
That was posted.
All right, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and drop this little list quickly into chat for folks.
So I do want to add Publishers Marketplace. I think
okay.
the subscription is worth it, especially if you're, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's one of those things that you don't, it's month by month. And so, you know, it's worth it just to learn a few things, if nothing else. But really, I think manuscript wishlist, because it's so targeted, that's what an agent wants in the moment. And so if you have that thing, you can get, I always found that I got quicker feedback from queries off of manuscript wishlist than I did pretty much anywhere else.
Let's see, I'm sharing panelists. Let me share it to everybody. Yeah, I find I had a few of them that I submitted it a thing based on the MSWL, and it was like exactly what they wanted. And then they're like, well, you know, it wasn't quite what I wanted. So, you know, yeah, but there's this thing about somebody posted the other day about it was an agent, like a little cartoon. It said the agent, you know, like, bring me chocolate cake. And I said, here's your chocolate cake. Like, I wanted red velvet. So it's like, you have to kind of get that right exact thing they're looking for.
Yeah.
So we also talked about when you actually go to querying, do you query in batches? Do you do like a batch and you send out, 10, 20, 30 at once and then wait and see and then adjust and then send the next batch? Or do you guys prefer to just kind of saturate the market, get it all out to everybody at once and see what happens? So who wants to grab that one?
I'm the outlier.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Jose.
Okay. Because I did small batches, and I started actually in very, very small batches. And then I gradually, as I would start to get responses, up the number that I had out at any given moment. And I know lots of people who swear by blanket querying. And if I were in a different circumstance than I was in back then, I might have done that. I think both approaches can be valuable. The reason I started small is because I was still tinkering, and I know that can be a dangerous stage to be in, but in fact, some of the feedback that I got from the early people who passed helped me make that first project stronger, and I think were responsible for me being able to land an agent eventually.
Right. And I didn't even start until I was sick to death of the manuscript. And I am not doing anything else unless I get something really specific that somebody says, you need to fix this. So I did have a ranking system, and I did go in order top down, but I blasted out as many as I could within each day that I had to give to that, that pursuit. So every weekend I was, spending several hours. How many can I get out in a day?
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is.
Jaden, how'd you do it?
So I took a very, very sciencey approach to it. So I made a list of all the people I wanted to query. Yeah, big surprise. And so I made a huge list of all the people that I was interested in querying that would get added to with manuscript wishlist and stuff if things popped up. And then I would query in batches of 10. And I would wait to see how the response rate was. So in general, I found that if the response rate for requests was around 20% or higher, there was something correct with my query letter. If I was getting just flat out rejections on everything, that meant my query letter was crap and it needed to be redone. And so I used this as a what's wrong. And as the response rate went up, that told me, okay, the query letter is fine. There must be something wrong with the first couple chapters. And that I also am a big fan of what's called revenge querying, which is I always had 10 out at any given time. So if I got a rejection, then I revenge queried and queried the next, it's cathartic, right? I'd query the next person on my list because I had just gotten a rejection.
To replace it,
and so there was always about 10 out at any given time. I didn't want to have more out than that because to me, if I had sent out 50 and I had gotten a bunch of form rejections on them, and then eventually someone, pointed something really simple out, I would have felt bad having thrown away 50 potential queries. I wanted to, make sure I was getting the appropriate response rate. And I think response rates are something that people should really think about when they're doing their queries, because there's it tells you so much, the kind of feedback you're getting. If you're not getting, at least in my opinion, at least a 20% response rate as request for more material, something is wrong with your query and you need to look at it.
See, I wish you'd been around when I was doing my queries this last time, because I think out of 135, 140 queries that I did, I think I got 3 responses total. Now I did stop.
I do want to jump on
go ahead.
Because there's also a very large number of, especially the bigger name agents, who don't respond, period. They don't, especially if you're a new author. And I mean, I've actually read articles that they posted online about how they don't respond. And so the way to get their attention is if you already have an offer, right, then you send them another email and say, hey, I've got an offer, never heard from you. Now suddenly you've got a response. And they literally have said in interviews that that's how they approach new writers, is once you have an offer, if you still are interested in them and you send them a follow-up, now they'll look at your work, and that can be more than once. So not getting any response is not necessarily a bad thing. And I always look at it as a good one, because that's an open door that you can re-enter once you have something on the table. So.
Okay, and I think when you're talking about response, you're talking about somebody actually requesting the chapters or requesting more versus
I'm after for, and I would, if they took longer than 3 months, I timed them out and considered it a rejection.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Yeah, I did mine in batches, and only because when I was doing it initially, I didn't have all the agents. I was kind of finding them as I went, and I work basically a 70-hour-a-week full-time job with my husband and I here. So I kind of just did them as I found them. Now I've got a whole big batch of them. Unfortunately, my editor told me that my new book, which was supposed to be an adult sci-fi novel, is actually 2 young adult novels put together. So I'm having to rejigger my thinking about it, but I think I will probably still do more of the one big batch. I did stop and rejigger in the middle. I had a lot of responses saying it didn't grab me. So I went back to my editor and a couple of friends and had them look at it and said, okay, what's not grabbing people about this, my opening chapter? And got some responses and chopped off 3 chapters and reworked the thing and then started again. And my responses, I think, at least in terms of, I didn't get a lot more interest, but I got better responses. I got a lot less of the, it didn't grab me response. So that, again, calculating that out. So once you get your queries out there, we should do a real quick talk about what goes in a query letter. What's the most important thing to grab an agent, first of all? Is there one or 2 tips you would give folks in terms of what you did right or what you did wrong or what they should avoid?
Tight query. No extra information. It better be flawless in terms of punctuation, syntax, and you need to make sure that you hook them with that little blurb. So it's not necessarily a back jacket blurb, but it needs to be tight and oh God, what are some of the big things I've seen new writers do? Especially they want to tell you the whole story. They want to like a synopsis, but that's not what you put in a query. You want to take like the most powerful element or the most powerful character and display that. It doesn't matter if there's 15 POVs in your book. That's irrelevant. Like figure out the main theme, the main part, and stick it in there because it has to be the carrot that gets them to read farther.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people misunderstand that because it's, the purpose of the query is not to tell what the book's about. The purpose of the query is to get the agent to ask for the pages so they can see how brilliant your writing is. And I think people misunderstand and think that you have to tell them the whole story. You want to tell them the most enticing thing or the most enticing character, as they said. Very, very important.
My approach to the text of the pitch was basically to explain, focus on the character that I thought was the most interesting. And I generally write single POV anyway, but if I had more than one POV, I'd probably just focus on one and give a brief mention of what was wrong with their life before the inciting incident. What is their inciting incident? What is it that they now have to do? And what are the stakes? And just kind of polish that up and make that sound good and just stop right there after establishing what those stakes are. And I think then you're communicating to an agent that you know a little bit about story structure and that you know what is going to entice them.
And don't do it in a vacuum. If you possibly can, get someone's eyes on it who's queried successfully, because I was doing it all wrong. And I had a friend who was a published author who's like, let me see your query because you're not getting responses, but I've read your work. And she turned it all around and she showed me how to do it. And I was like, oh, that's what a query looks like. And then everything changed. So
okay.
Another reason to watch those percentages, because if you're not getting feedback, something's probably wrong with your query.
Yeah, I have to say thank Elle. Elle helped me out a lot with my query letter as I was going through the process. So thank you very much. It didn't work yet, but it really helped me sharpen it. I made that mistake too at first. I had so Drop Knots is now going to be self-published, right? Back there. But that was my query book. And I have 10 points of view in it. And so I thought, I need to tell them about all 10 points of view. So-and-so is this, and so-and-so is that, and this guy's that, and this one's that. So yeah, I narrowed it way down. And intentionally for the next one I'm working on, I limited first of all to 3 points of view. And there is one character who really is the main character in the story, so I can focus on it. Whereas that book really had no one main character. So it was really hard for me to pull that thread out and say, and this is his story or her story going through the whole thing. That's really good advice, guys. Thank you. Let's say you get an agent, let's say you get an offer first of all, or 3 offers or 5 offers. How do you decide which agent to go with? I know you've kind of touched on this a little bit as we talked earlier, but is there, when you got your offers, was there one deciding thing that brought you down to it? Was it agency size? Like Elle, you said it was really more, did that agent get you? How do you narrow it down? Because I've had friends who've gotten offers and have gotten like one big publisher, one big agency that was a general agency, and one smaller agency that was much more LGBTQ friendly, but maybe had less reach. So how do you weigh those factors for yourself to try to pick the right agent?
I had two offers, so I didn't have tons and tons and tons of
Yeah.
choice. The agent that offered second was the agent that I ended up going with. And what really nudged me, it was a difficult decision. And you would think that it's a nice moment of revenge to be the one with the power and the one turning somebody else down.
Hard.
But in fact, here comes the first person who's actually believed in you. And the first person said, yes, welcome, come on in. And then you're going to turn one of those people away. So it actually hurt a lot to say no to somebody. I chose to go with DMLA because, I mean, that speculative fiction zone and Donald Moss agency is just kind of huge within speculative fiction. So I felt like they would have the connections to be able to build my career. I think it's very important though, once you do make a choice, and I think I've been pretty good about this, to not look back and not what if, and just the choice has been made and nothing else matters. There's just no way to second guess.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had it go, I've gone through this 4 times. So the first time I had 1 offer. That was a nice, easy choice. The second time I had 7.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
And I was with the Moss agency for a brief time also for the same reasons. Then the next time around I had 4, and I ended up going with the president of a very large agency in New York, who had offered. And she was one of those who had written one of the articles about how she didn't take anybody unless you already had an offer on the table, and then messaged her again. So that was actually how I got with the president of Macintosh Notice at the time, who was wonderful. She was great, but she took me on for a mainstream male-female time travel romance, and I was just moving into writing lesfic, and that wasn't her area of expertise. And so while we parted friends, and she's like, if you come up with anything else mainstream, I'm your girl, I knew that wasn't going to work. And so I actually ended up going back to one of the others in the group of 4 who had offered, who was really interested in doing the sci-fi lesbian romances that I was writing. And that was the craziest agent hunt ever. I literally sent her a Facebook message and said, hey, do you want me? And she's like, let me reread it. But yeah, I think so. And so that was that. But yeah.
Okay.
So big agency, small agency, it just kind of depends.
Okay. And Jaden, did you have a selection? Do you have a process you went through?
Yeah, so I didn't have a huge number of choices. But for both of the times I went through querying, there were 2 options.
Okay.
And for me, it was very clear cut. There was one person who liked it, loved the project, wanted to offer, but had a huge laundry list of changes to make it more commercial. Mm-hmm. And then there was one who had a smaller list of changes to make it more commercial, but seemed to actually understand what I was trying to do. And that was a no-brainer for me in terms of, especially with the book that got me my most recent agent was a non-binary fantasy, and it dealt with non-binary themes very strongly. And so between the two agents that were offering on it, I feel like Sam was the only one who actually cared about the non-binary aspect of it, in terms of the character and their journey, instead of just, this is hot right now and I think I can sell it, but I'm going to need you to do this, this, and this.
Oh yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So go ahead.
About the kinds of things that agents ask, because I neglected to mention it just because it's been so long, I hadn't really thought about it. But one of the things that also impressed me about Cameron was when she actually said, I'm interested, but there are things that I would like you to change. Her comments were insightful, and her comments made me feel like she understood what I was going for and was going to help me make it better, as opposed to somebody who's trying to fit me into a box.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we need to make your non-binary character binary, and we need to have them be a male with a female love interest. But is that okay with you? Okay, let's do one more before we open up to questions. We've got a few questions waiting too. So Jaden, going back to this idea, what happens once you get past the first gatekeeper and then there's a second gatekeeper? What's your experience been?
Oh, dear God. So, so you get there and the euphoria wears off, and your agent will say, here's, who I'm thinking of sending it out to. And they, at least mine, does small batches as well. They don't hit wide. He usually shoots for the stars first, and then we work our way down. But it's the same. There's still wait times with all of those. So, they might submit, depending upon your genre, to Tor and, all these other fairly relatively large names. And then you wait to get the feedback from those. And then maybe you start pinging down to mid-size press and so you sort of work your way through. But, you still have to, you can ask your agent to withhold the personalized rejections or tell you them. I like to hear them personally. But so it was, it was very much the same. It was submitted to these 5 places. A couple of weeks have passed. Here's the rejections. Here's what's going on. The big difference is you don't get an edit period. So like, oh, I've gotten rejected from 10. I'm going to change it and try it out. No, it's still going out.
Okay, so it's out of your hands.
Mm-hmm. And eventually, and this is not, I want to be really clear for people, it's not uncommon to not sell your first book. After you get agented. In fact, there are plenty of people who don't sell the first 2, 3, or even 4 books with their agent. Just because, your agent loved your work doesn't mean the publishers will.
So do you self-pub at that point?
So I just went small press with it once we gave up. So we finally gave up around year 2. And now, another one's on sub. And that's just the only problem is if you already have published self-pub or small press, if you already have that track record, you're going to have a big old gap in your publication history. Right. Unless you continue to do some stuff on the side. So just know that you might want to have some other small press type stuff on hold because traditional publishing moves at glacial speed. Yeah. And so even if you get an agent and then you sell it right away, it's still going to be 2 or 3 years before it actually comes out.
You're coming out in 2024. Congratulations.
Enjoy. Hope you can feed yourself until then.
Yeah. Okay. And you guys?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing actually. But my first book, which got me my first, my third book, which got me my first agent, did not sell. And I rewrote it from the ground up. But while I was doing that, I wrote another book. That one I sold to a small press, and then I got an agent to handle the contract. Okay. While she was shopping the male-female time travel romance thing, which is still out there on submission. It's just different agent, different submission. But then my current agent started at the top, worked down. I am in small press, and we have had multiple conversations about, where do I want to be? Where am I happy? I'm actually really happy where I am. I love my editing team, and I love my cover art team, and I love my promo team. And so while a 5 book might be in my writing future, at this time, I'm pretty, I work full time too. And so this is where I am right now and what I can juggle. And the 4 book deal that she just worked out, those books were already written, which was really, really nice. And we kind of decided we're going to stick with small press until I'm in a better headspace, because COVID has messed me up creatively. I'm happy writing until I'm in a better headspace to write again. And then the next thing I do that's fresh, she wants to shoot at the Big 5 again. So, right now I'm happy just to keep my name out there. And then as they were saying, I just want to keep my head in the game, and keep books coming out on a regular basis. And then I will think about writing something bigger at some point. So.
Okay.
I've had 3 books go out on submission. Well, I've had 3 books not sell since getting represented, and been to the board. And it's an interesting experience when a half dozen or a dozen authors at a publisher follow you on Twitter, and then a week later, suddenly they're gone. So it's like, Okay, interesting that. I have had conversations with my agent about kind of where I see myself. I believe that what I write has mainstream potential. And so I've asked her to pretty much exclusively shop me at not exclusively Big Five, but Big Five or really kind of top tier medium publishers. And if something doesn't sell, I'll just write something else. And there's a lot to be said for when you do. I've spoken to a ton of Big Five published authors who finally broke through with their fourth or fifth book or whatever. And then some of those other books that they had shopped that hadn't sold became their really quick follow-up books, you know. And there's a lot to be said for having a book that you have already written, that you spent a lot of time thinking about, and maybe since it was shopped and didn't sell, you already have thoughts on how it could be better. So no, I haven't, I haven't shopped those projects to smaller presses. I haven't self-published them. They're sitting there, they're not going anywhere. I can always change my mind. Or if I ever, when I'm in a position somewhere down the line, I might take those out and say, how do you like these now?
And you do a lot of short fiction publishing.
Yeah, I have I've built a pretty decent amount of name recognition within science fiction and fantasy. So I feel like it's not unrealistic to think somewhere down the line that might pay off.
Yeah, when you're young too. You got time.
We're not as young as you think.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, we're young.
We're all like 20 here, right?
Right. Yeah.
Scott, we've been reminded that it's
we're getting
after. I might want to get to the questions.
Yeah, so we have 2 questions in queue right now. First one I'm going to tackle first and then throw out to you guys. Valerie asks, how long do you sit on a work while querying? Do you ever just write something new and let a piece go? And so for me, because I did this kind of long extended process with mine, it actually was sitting on it for about, it was in Pitch Wars for 2 months basically, and then I sent it to query, and it was in query for about a year. So that was my time frame on that one. I did in the meantime start to write the next thing, and kind of I believe that Yul Brynner quote about every part of the pine tree is edible. You can use everything that you've written in some way or another. I've committed to a monthly publication schedule on Amazon for now, and then I'm starting to go wide as well, but kind of trying to take advantage of their algorithm, doing re-releases that I have of books and things that I've taken back, doing short stories, doing new work, etc. So I've got new stuff kind of hitting on a regular basis. And I'm also cycling my shorter stories into and out of publication in about 90 days, so people can buy it, done with it, but not have it this big, long, clogged up list of like all this weird stuff and what does he write, and kind of confuse the waters. So you guys, when you send out, how long do you give your work in general to query out to agents before you pull it? And what do you do in the meantime while you're waiting as far as working on new stuff?
So I gave it about 100. I'm sorry, did you want to pick somebody?
No, go ahead.
I gave it about 100, and I really hurt for the people who say, yeah, I sent it to my top 10 and I got rejected by all 10 and I trunked it. The top 10 agents are probably not taking a lot of first time authors. They
yes, true.
Go farther than that, I trunked the first book I ever tried to query after about 100. And I got my first offer at about 100 on my second book, on the second book I queried. And 100 seems to be about right. And
okay.
that probably seems like a huge number, but the good news is that you get used to rejection. It's like, oh, look, 5 rejections. Oh, well, whatever. But in the meantime, I'm writing another couple of books. And I mean, I have queried 2 books at once. I've queried 3 books at once. And every new book you write is that spark of hope that keeps you going.
Right.
So it's I would definitely say, make sure that you are writing your next book while you are querying this book. That is the best piece of armor that you can wear when those rejections start coming in. As well, if it's not this book, it'll be the next book.
Agreed. And Jaden, you?
I sorry, I was totally lost the train of
so,
questioning.
So how long do How long do you sit on a work? How long do you put out for query basically, and then what do you do in the
So
meantime?
for my very first book I ever tried to query, which I did get offers on, I started really getting the hang of querying around about 100. So 100 seems to be the sort of magical place. But I will say that, and while I ended up turning down my offers and just going small press with that, because I just had a different vision for it that I think a lot of people. When I went back into the query trenches, I knew a lot more about query letters, and I only queried 10 people.
Wow.
So yeah, and I got an 80% response rate on it.
Ooh.
So
Nice.
it's
Okay, so you and I are going to talk later about writing a query letter.
it's
Hey.
No, I'm going to still talk to you again too. Thank you.
But I agree that you need to keep writing. Always never
Yeah.
stop writing. Always
Yeah.
keep writing while you're querying.
I think that's just good advice for an author, like around everything, not just agenting. Just keep on writing, keep putting new stuff out. Jose?
So I feel like I hear multiple questions in one in this question, because yes, of course, I think that while something is making the rounds, you should be working on another creative project. For me, short fiction is what I bounce to in between long fiction projects. So that's, I'll work on some stuff and get it out and try to sell. As far as like how many agents to query before you quit, or how long? That question feels like it's coming from a place that I don't really understand. I will continue to query it until the people that I wanted to query it, send it to, until that list is exhausted. And then I'll stop. And on the other hand, I think my short fiction background has made me I'm a lot more comfortable with trunking things than a lot of people I talk to. So at that point, I mean, because a lot of short stories end up in the trunk. Well, I'll just write something else then, and you never know when there'll be an anthology call that matches exactly what you have. Well, you never know when there'll be an editor who wants exactly what you have.
Yeah. And I will say the 4 books I just sold, they were trunked books.
Yeah.
They were books that I had stopped shopping, and now they want them. So yay.
Okay. Now I have another question from Lloyd. Lloyd is asking, I've been saying in my query that I was previously represented by another agent, but I'm beginning to think that this may be a red flag instead of an indication of legitimacy. Should you ever say that? Elle is a definite yes, right?
Coming from someone who's had 4, it depends on how you parted ways. So if you parted ways amicably, and if there's any way that you can part ways amicably, part ways amicably. My first agent got cancer and left agenting, and she made a full recovery. She's doing great, but not anybody's fault. My second agent left agenting. Again, nothing that can be put on me as, I drove her out.
What are you doing?
I know. What am I doing to agents? My third, as I said, she wanted more mainstream. That wasn't where my creative flow was going. Again, no issues. The door was open. She left it open. All good parting. So if you can state that you had another agent, but parted in a friendly way, it made a lot. What are you doing over there? It made it a lot. Yeah, thanks. It made it a lot easier I think. Because every time I searched after each one, my search got shorter. And I told you about my most recent one. It was a 5-minute search. So, I think that having jumped that hurdle and having proven that I could write, maybe I wasn't selling, but that might not be because of how I write, but maybe what I write. But it seemed to make the search easier each time I tried, and shorter and faster. So I would say if you parted in a good way, then yes, mention it.
So you truly are like the Black Widow of authors.
Agents. Yes, I take them all out, apparently.
Yes.
I better warn my current to beware, I guess.
So either you want to throw something in on next, we're about at the end of our time, and then we'll throw it over to Discord.
I agree.
Yay! Jose?
I like it when people agree with me.
Okay, so are you guys going to go over to the Discord chat?
I will be over in the Discord chat. Happy to answer querying questions. Yep.
I'm going to stay here, and you really don't want me because I haven't gotten an agent yet, so I'm not going to help you very much. But I've got another panel coming up in the next batch. So you guys go have fun. And Lloyd, head over there, or I'm sure he could use some additional help. I know he's looking for another agent, and he's been really in the search a lot. So thank you very much, guys. This is a great panel.
want to read, JS. So I need links to your stuff. Okay.
What are we losing at the very end of the chat?
Okay, wait, you want what now? I missed that. Everyone broke
One more
up
time.
really weirdly.
Yeah.
I need links to your work because you sound like you write stuff I want to read.
Well, it's lesbian as shit, man. Just
Perfect. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. All right, lesbian and bisexual. I need to read you. Okay.
All right. Are you discording? We'll swap.
I've read
I'm
one of the
discording. All right, let's do it.
I've read one of the Argelum books, and the book was awesome, even though it was the one I was not supposed to read because it was the last one of the short stories. But you can read it by itself. It works as a standalone, but I recommend it highly.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
All right, I'll see you in Discord. All right.
All right, and talk to you soon. I'll hit both of you up for more advice.
I'm like to walk away like I'm going somewhere, you know.
Bye. Okay, and I'm just going to hang out here, but I'll turn my audio and video off for the moment.